little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see.
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, welcome to Know Where to Hide. And whatever platform you're accessing this video on, if you haven't already subscribed, well, feel free to subscribe. If you haven't told a friend, maybe tell a friend that they can get some good information about what's going on in the great Gem State right here. So let's talk about some follow-up to something we touched on in one of the episodes last week, and that is the transfer of the Ford Idaho Center to College of Western Idaho. Now, the City of Nampa would like to see this happen, and they actually had a public meeting on Monday, and well, let's just say they weren't so happy with what all of the citizens had to say. We'll be elaborating on this. Mayor to transplant, your fix doesn't work here. But Nampa residents did show up, and some of them were pushing back on that Ford Idaho Center transfer. Let's first of all, though, define the problem with how this transfer is taking place. And for that, I'm going to go back to the article I mentioned last week from Rachel Heslip with the Idaho Freedom Foundation. In her article, which I strongly recommend you read for yourself, she outlines the problems that we see with this transfer as it's being carried out, or at least as it's being proposed. She says the city's decision to potentially transfer the Ford Idaho Center to CWI, College of Western Idaho, raises several concerns for Nampans especially, but also for citizens across Idaho. And here are the major problems that we see. First of all, it's potentially being transferred without independent appraisals of the property. So why have an appraisal? Well, that appraisal provides a clear market-based valuation of the property, ensuring the transaction is fair and transparent to the public. But without an accurate assessment of the value of the Ford Idaho Center, taxpayers don't know if they're being deprived of a fair return on their investment, and the opportunity to sell or have an auction or public bidding process is missed. Now, typically the sale or transfer of public property is subject to open market processes, including auctions and bidding, and that's to make sure that the transaction is not only competitive, but also transparent. Making a transfer directly to College of Western Idaho without an appraisal and sale, an auction or bidding process, well, that deprives the taxpayers of the opportunity to maximize the value of the property for public benefit. I mean, if the taxpayers are the ones who paid for it, they really should have a say. Second, and perhaps the donkey in the room, many tax-paying Nampans take issue with handing over a multi-million-dollar asset to an institution that's been known to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion and radical theory institutionally and academically. That's counter to Idaho ethos. The College of Western Idaho has become known as a progressive institution, and it's made recent strides to become a four-year college. So she says, it's safe to assume the transfer of the Ford Idaho Center would significantly lend itself to achieving that goal sooner than later. Third, voters in Nampa approved a Nampa Auditorium District in 2024. That was designed to support maintenance and upgrades to public venues like the Ford Idaho Center. Now, the Auditorium District is set to collect 5% tax on hotel stays within the district, and if ownership passes to a separate public entity such as College of Western Idaho, well, then the district's governance becomes murkier, with funds potentially diverted or subject to complex oversight. Also, some Nampans have voiced that they would not have supported the Auditorium District had they known that the Ford Idaho Center was going to be transferred. Last, and she says, perhaps the biggest issue is the profound lack of transparency throughout this process. Citizens weren't brought into the discussion surrounding the transfer or the negotiations of the transfer contract itself. The way it appears is that the City of Nampa has been backtracking after their plan was released. So it seems their strategy of the transfer so far has simply been move fast, explain later. But the public hearings that they held up to this point gave no impression of leadership being interested in public input. Rather, the mayor and College of Western Idaho president simply gave broad, seemingly scripted answers to softball questions, giving the 20,000-foot view about how the plan is supposed to work, but not really wanting to dwell on the details. And when you see this next bid, you'll understand why. So they did hold a meeting this week, and someone did stand up and express their concerns or disagreement with the plans of the city officials. The Idaho Freedom Foundation posted this tweet in response to Senator Brian Lenny. Senator Lenny said, wow, she went there. Nampa Mayor Debbie Kling last night pulled the "you're not a real Idahoan because you haven't been here long enough" card. And the point here is, concerned citizens came to this Nampa City Council meeting to voice their opinions on the Ford Center giveaway. But instead of listening, Mayor Debbie Kling brushed them off, sidelined them, ridiculed their testimony, even longtime residents of Nampa. So here are the details, and thanks to the Idaho Dispatch for covering this story as they did. Patty Evans, in her testimony, said she has a degree in recreation, park, and tourism sciences from Texas A&M University. She also said she was a park ranger for 15 years. She was critical of the city council and mayor in her testimony, stating she believed that secret meetings were taking place regarding the Ford Idaho Center. Now, the mayor was not happy about that. Well, she denied the secret meetings, and then she shot back saying, so you brought some real ideas with you from someplace else, but not really Nampa, not necessarily Nampa, after asking, how long have you been here? Or where did you come here from? Anyway, it's that nativist question. And look, I've experienced it. In fact, yes, even when I was younger, I probably engaged. You ain't from around here, are you? Probably to some out-of-state hunter who was pursuing the same pheasants I wanted. Anyway, so Kling fired back at Evans, denying there were secret meetings, and then she asked if she had any solutions. And when she gave those solutions, that's when Kling gave her, well, you brought solutions from somewhere else, but that's certainly not from Idaho. So it's just a mess. And when Senator Lenny was approached by the Idaho Dispatch for, well, what's your take on this? He said, well, the whole thing feels pre-cooked to me, much like the University of Phoenix deal. And some of you will remember this. This played out in North Idaho, and he says it was much of that was negotiated in secret, and then it fell apart, a huge waste of time and money. But the questions he's asking, I think, are very, very pertinent to this issue. For instance, why is it only coming to light now if conversations have been happening for a year? Did they already vote on this behind closed doors? Now, he says, I've heard rumors they did, but who knows if that's true. How will College of Western Idaho upgrade or manage this new facility and then cover the cost of upgrades? CWI president told the Legislative Finance Committee, JFAC, that College of Western Idaho is growing rapidly, serving a huge portion of Idaho students, but they desperately need more state support to avoid turning students away or cutting corners. So how much of a financial strain will this put on College of Western Idaho, and what will the legislature say about it? Oh, there may be some accountability coming here. On another note, he says some folks are wondering how Nampa will afford to maintain and repair the facility. First off, Nampa created that auditorium taxing district specifically to funnel money to the Nampa Civic Center and the Ford Idaho Center. He also says Jeff Agenbrod, a former Idaho legislator and big spender, pushed for this new taxing district for this exact purpose. Secondly, Senator Lenny says the deferred maintenance issue is murky, since what's deemed necessary can be subjective, digging up and redoing the entire parking lot, for instance. Bottom line, he says, Nampa paid for this. We don't want to hand it over for free to be controlled by the College of Western Idaho board, which is mostly made up of people from Ada County. Why not sell it? Why not use the auditorium district funds to maintain it? That's the whole reason that it was created in the first place. Maybe get a better management company. He says, at this point, I have more questions than answers. So here's the good news. There's another meeting coming up on the 18th. And if you are a resident in the Nampa area, if you're a part of that auditorium district, maybe this would be worth your time to attend. It sure has the appearance that, the mayor's reaction of, well, I'm from around here, and playing that you haven't been here long enough to have an opinion on this, is such a deterrent or a deflection away from, we really want to know if, first of all, this does serve the interest of the taxpayers, whose money is being used, or if this is something that is only to benefit those who are currently in power. Oh, I know. Human nature is that if you don't watch people, give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Well, it appears that in Nampa, they've taken a mile and perhaps a little bit more. At any rate, a couple of great resources here. Again, IdahoFreedom.org. Look for Rachel Hazlip's article on the transfer of the Ford Idaho Center to College of Western Idaho. And I would encourage you to look at the Idaho Dispatch story on this, which covers the mayor's bizarre treatment of people who were testifying and who had a right and even a duty to testify, whether she agrees with them or not. Does that seem like a good idea to be asking people, how long have you been here? There are a lot of ways to pull rank, but that seems to be the lowest hanging fruit for those of a political bent. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.